Hey, and welcome to the Sit Down with Suzanne podcast. I am your girl, Suzanne, also known as Positively Suzanne. Now, remember, this podcast was created with us in mind. It is a reminder that not only are we worthy, but we deserve the best versions of ourselves. So grab a cup of tea or your beverage of choice and sit back and relax and join me on this journey. Hey guys, it's your girl Suzanne, and it is a brand new episode. And we are going to be talking about communication, or I probably should say miscommunication. This week it's been so insightful in terms of just seeing how communication or lack thereof can truly mess something up. And as you know, it's not the first time I've thought about it. I've taught on it. It's something that, we spoke about a lot at work, a lot at work. I think a few years ago, communication before, now it's diversity, right? But back in the day, and I just probably just told my age, but communication was the big thing. And, like they describe it as, the imparting of information. You can communicate verbally, orally, and all of that. But if you're not communicating effectively, it could cause a whole lot of problem. And I watch a lot of TV shows, as you can tell, based on me quoting several TV shows and all of that. But a lot of times I say to myself, like, this could all be solved if they communicated. And I chuckle. But I mean, if they communicated, I suppose we wouldn't have the movies, we wouldn't have the TV shows, we wouldn't have the drama. Think about even a Hallmark movie, right? It's a guy and a girl, and they have some miscommunication or a misunderstanding, and they spend the whole not 2 hours, 1 hour and 58 minutes, like trying to resolve it. And then in the last 2 minutes of the movie, it kills me. And every time I go back and I watch it, right? The last 2 minutes, the communication is resolved, and then they kiss, and it fades, and it's movie magic. But communication or breakdown of communication or lack of communication caused a lot of things to happen in our life. It caused a lot of things to be destroyed, honestly. And I've seen family members, go at each other or not talk to each other because of lack of communication. And I'm going to encourage you that if you have relationships in your lives that you value, that you really truly focus on communicating and not just getting your voice heard, but also listening to the other person and making sure that their voice is heard. There was a book that and I actually just had this conversation with somebody at a meeting that I attended yesterday, and it was called it's either winning with accountability or leading with accountability. And it was the essence of the book, or the main point of the book that I got, is when you communicated with someone and you gave them your expectations, you have them, repeat back to you that they understood exactly what you're looking for. And that was so crucial for me in a time in leadership where I went from overseeing one store to overseeing, 12 to 16 stores. I went to overseeing, I think 20 people to over 100, I think at 200 at some point during the holiday season. I went to overseeing, my peers. And it was so important that it not only that you have an understanding of your expectation, but the person that you're holding accountable to delivering those expectations should also have an understanding of what you're looking for. And that, like I mentioned, that was a crucial thing for me in my leadership journey. And as I've gone through and, become a leader in many different spheres, I really try to make sure that that happens. Doesn't mean I hit it perfectly all the time, because we're all human, we're not perfect, and we certainly have opportunity in all things. But I truly try to make sure that that understanding, that communication, and I look at some of the relationships that I've had over the years, and there are times that communications is important, and there are times that we misunderstand the communications and relationship shifts and change. But I will say this, God has given me discernment, and I can truly see a person who is meant who meant what means well to me. And there are times I will start off with somebody, and then I slowly, their character is revealed, and I shift. And I mean, I don't write anybody off because God didn't write me off, but I shift and I pivot away from that person in terms of, I know that this isn't a deep relationship that I am seeking to establish, but this is somebody that, I wish them well, and I'm going to move forward and go with God. But I've seen a lot of breakdown in relationships because of lack of communications. I've seen friendships fall apart because of miscommunications. I've seen family fall apart. And, I mentioned the TVs and the movies, and I'm just like, and I mentioned it before, and I say sometimes, like, seriously, why can't they just communicate? Why can't they just talk? And in my real life, sometimes, like somebody does something to you and you're mad, and instead of like reaching out to them and saying like, hey, you did this or you hurt me, um, we don't. But we have got to get out of the habit of holding grudges. We've got to get out of the habit of, if somebody says something and it hurts us, and if it's somebody that you care about, be open. Tell them like, hey, that hurt me. Or that was a bit much, or that was rude. And and not necessarily, not in a rude way, or not in a public space, not with an audience. But if it's somebody that you care about, step up, tell them how it impacted you, and hopefully, if the relationship is strong enough, it could withstand, that. And I think I've seen when communication breakdown happens, right? And let's talk about friendship for a minute, and the relationship kind of breaks down. I see people create narratives around the communication, what they think happened, what they thought happened, and without actually knowing what happened. And if it's somebody that you care about, you really have to make the effort not to assume that this happened. And speaking of TV shows, I mentioned that I'm a fan, right? So there is this skit. It's between Key and Peele, and I think it was from the show that they had. And I'm trying to find this skit again, and it was on social media that I found it, and I keep going. So like they're texting each other, and they're reading between the lines, right? And like one person is like, hey, you want to go outside, and the other one is like reading it angry, like like, yeah, let's go. And this person's like ready to tussle, right? And then the other one is like, yeah, let's go. Like, oh, Lily's in the field. So, I think in written communications, oftentimes we read it based on how we're feeling at the time. If we're in a kind of funky mood, we're going to read it funkily. Like, if we're in a good mood, we're going to read it like, oh, okay. And, I'll do this. So I have a sister of mine, and she knows who she is. I ain't going to call her name out, but she gets angry, and the girl got a temper. And when she texts sometimes, like I'm looking at her text and I was like, this chick is rude. So I pick up the phone, I call her. I was like, girl, like, did you mean to be that rude? And she's like, nah, nah, nah. No, I didn't mean anything like that. That's not what I meant. And, so it could be colored by the fact that I know that she is rude, that, sometimes when she texts me, I assume that she's being rude. So I pick up, but, instead of like feeling bad and wallowing is like, all right, nah, girl, this like she was rude, and then not talking to her and all of that. Life is too short for that. I pick up the phone and I'm like, listen, girl, like you were so rude. And then she's like, nah, I wasn't rude. And there were times like sometimes I'm like, yeah, she's not being rude. Like, let me just like move on. But then there's times like I pick her, I'm like, girl, like I'm gonna call you out because you need to know how your texts come over. Because where I'm her sister and I love her and I know that it comes from a good place, other folks might be reading her text and be like, this chick. So I'm like, I just reach out to her and she cracks up because she was like, I was not being rude. I'm like, well, it came across rude, but this is a relationship that I value, and this is my sister, and I'm invested in that relationship, and I want it to be well. But there are other relationships that I'm sure in the past that, lost the potential to go further because maybe I misunderstood a situation, and I'm honest enough to know that. I don't know all of them because, I've met so many people in my life, and, I'm friendly. Y'all know I've never met a stranger, and I hope that I gave it the due diligence. I hope that I gave it the justice that it deserved. But I'm pretty sure that there's a few relationships that fell through the cracks because of miscommunication. It's okay. Where I am in my life right now, I am so good. I am so happy. I am so blessed. And doesn't mean that everything is perfect. It just means that, I'm doing my thing. But I am being very intentional in my life right now to ensure that the people that are in my life, the people that I value, that, we communicate. My husband and I, we have a great relationship, and then there's times that there are misunderstanding. I'm gonna tell y'all the truth. It's his fault. But but anyway, y'all understand what I mean by that, right? But then I'm like, all right, I'm mad. And then I was like, I pull up, I was like, hold up, this is my husband, my partner, like I ain't got no time to be sitting out of here all moping. Um, doesn't happen all the way all the time because if you're in a relationship, you understand that, like, it's not in the moment that you have this revelation and all goodness and light and whatever. Like sometimes you be mad and you're in your feelings, but then I'm like, you know what, just let this go, boo, and certainly move on. Relationship with my siblings, like relationships with siblings. So I really hope you use my example as my relationship with my spouse, to really focus on, if you're in a relationship with a spouse, a partner, um, you know, having conversations, sometimes difficult and tough conversations. If there is a misunderstanding, is a miscommunication, I promise you, it doesn't pay to be all mad and unhappy all the time. Relationships with your parents are so crucial and important. My dad passed away, several years ago, and I'm still dealing with that. But, I have my mom, and my mom is a Caribbean mom. My mom is, strong will like me. And I tell you, like, there is sometimes, no disrespect. So for all y'all, don't, raise up your things at me. But like she be talking, I'm like, because Caribbean parents sometimes will say things, and then you correct them, or you try to like enlighten them, and like everything to a Caribbean parent is disrespectful, even when you're not being disrespectful. So you kind of got to choose your battles. But like, it's my mom. I love her. So it's one mom. So clearly, y'all know, if I'm talking about my mom, I'm talking about my mom because I only got one mama. Relationships with siblings could be fraught with potholes because they know your weak points, and sometimes, you say things that, because you know them, or you assume, or they know you and they assume, and feelings get hurt. Relationships with friends, it's the same thing. They don't respond to your text right away. You don't realize, you don't know what's going on. You're wondering, we've got to get rid of that. Like, we've got to get rid of that. And especially that last one of somebody not communicating. Like, I have a big thing of responding immediately. I believe in responding in a timely manner to emails, texts, and calls. But there is this thing that happens sometimes that I respond in my head and not actually on the phone. So I expect folks to show me grace when that happens, right? So by the same token, I do have friends that will have 99 unread messages. I don't know how they do it. That's them. Let them do themselves. But I'm like, I'm gonna show them grace because I expect them to show me grace, and they do show me grace when I don't respond immediately. Acquaintances, like anybody that's in your life, you have to ensure that you're communicating effectively, that you're following up if you have a misunderstanding, if you value that relationship. Follow up, communicate, ask questions, give answers, because you don't want to lose somebody because you let your pride get in the way. Communication is so important. Um, don't lose relationships because of it. And if the person is not important, let it go. And I spoke about, or I've spoken about this, several times, is taking self accountability. And I want y'all thinking I'm perfect, because believe me, I'm not. I'm still learning every day. But I really truly try to hold myself accountable, and taking self accountability when there's a miscommunication. I really try to pull back and see where I could have done something differently. And again, we all in our feelings sometimes, and we don't really realize that, hey, I'm the problem, it's me. And, we assume it's the other person, but really taking full accountability of yourself. And you might realize, okay, maybe I'm not completely innocent. Maybe I'm 10, 20, 30. All right, maybe 50% to blame. But listen, it takes two to tango, and it takes two for a misunderstanding. So let's just, as we go forth this week, really look at the relationships that are in our lives and figure out what can we do to make it better. How can we, become better communicators? How can we hold on to the love, the feeling of joy, the feeling of happiness that we get from these relationships? Because otherwise, you know what? We're up the creek. I truly believe that we can do this alone if we have to. You're right. This says we're born alone, we'll die alone, and all of that. But it is so much better when we have people in our lives. It is so much better when we have great relationships. And in order for us to have those relationships, we have to communicate. We have to address miscommunications. We have to hold ourselves accountable. We have to talk to each other. We have to make sure that, we apologize, we forgive, we let go, we love, we live in joy. Um, Over the past couple of weeks, months, years, I have said my condolences. May they rest in peace. I'm sorry for your loss so many times. I remember the year that my dad passed. I had been to a couple of different funerals, two little boys. Actually, it's sadly, they were both victims of drowning. And, I made a pledge like I can't do another. And that's the year that I lost my dad. I said I couldn't do another funeral. And, I'm hoping that it shifted and changed me, and I truly believe that it did. It just gave me a deeper understanding and a deeper respect for relationships. So I prioritize my relationships, and I really try to address any miscommunication that can happen. So I want you all to do me a favor this week. If there's any relationship in your life that you value, um, focus on ensuring that you're communicating effectively. Focus on ensuring that you're not losing out because of a misunderstanding. Focus on asking questions if you don't understand, instead of assuming. And, sometimes when we assume the wrong thing, and we're missing out and enjoying that person, enjoying that moment in your life, enjoying that relationship, because we misunderstood. So don't let the lack of communication stop you from truly living your best life and having your best relationships. Lack of communication can cause you to lose a lot of things. And although I enjoy my TV shows, my soap operas, my movies, my Hallmark shows, and everything that I appreciate and I love, because of a misunderstanding and it gets resolved, you don't want it in your real life. So handle your business and address it when it pops up, because I'm telling you, life is so much better when you share it with amazing people. And until next time, this is Suzanne. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode of the Sit Down with Suzanne podcast, which is available in all major podcasts and directories, including Amazon, Apple, Google, Pandora, Spotify, and a plethora of other spaces, including my very own website at www.positivelysuzanne.com. So choose your app and subscribe, listen, like, share, write a review. Do what you got to do, but make sure you tell a friend to tell a friend that this podcast is where it's at. You can also support the podcast by donating to the show at buymeacoffee.com/positively Susie. And until next time, this is Suzanne saying, you, my dear, are worth it.